When my sister Betsy and I were kids, our family lived for a while in a charming old farmhouse. We loved exploring its dusty corners and climbing the apple tree in the backyard. But our favorite thing was the ghost. We called her mother because she seemed so kind and nurturing. Some mornings, Betsy and I would wake up, and on each of our nightstands, we'd find a cup that hadn't been there the night before. Mother had left them there, worried that we'd get thirsty during the night. She just wanted to take care of us. Among the house's original furnishings was an antique wooden chair, which we kept against the back wall of the living room. Whenever we were preoccupied watching TV or playing a game, Mother would inch that chair forward across the room. We always felt sad putting it back against the wall. Mother just wanted to be near us. Years later, long after we'd moved out, I found an old newspaper article about the farmhouse's original occupant. A widow. She'd murdered her 2 children by giving them each a cup of poisoned milk before bed. Then she'd hanged herself. The article included a photo of the farmhouse's living room, with a woman's body hanging from a beam. Beneath her, knocked over, was that old wooden chair, placed exactly in the center of the room. Have you ever walked into a room and found a vampire? No? Not the sexy kind, but the foul creature with bony limbs and ashen skin. The kind that snarls as you enter, like a beast about to pounce. The kind that roots you to the spot with its sunken, hypnotic eyes, rendering you unable to flee as you watch the hideous thing uncoil from the shadows. Has your heart started racing, though your legs refuse to? Have you felt time slow as the creature crosses the room in the darkness of a blink? Have you shuddered with fear when it places one clawed hand atop your head and another under your chin so it can tilt you, exposing your neck? Have you ever squirmed as its rough, dry tongue slides down your cheek, over your jaw to your throat, in a slithering search that's seeking your artery? Have you felt its hot breath release in a hiss against your skin when it probes your pulse? The flow that leads to your brain? Has its tongue rested there, throbbing slightly, as if savoring the moment? Have you then experienced a sinking, sucking blackness as you discover that not all vampires feed on blood? Some feed on memories. Well, have you? Maybe not. But let me rephrase the question. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly forgot why you came in? I bought a new house, town of Winthrop. The house was cheap, but the most important part was that I needed to get away from the city. A few months ago, I had run in with a stalker. Well, I had managed to get him arrested. I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes just constantly watching me. I felt like there were eyes everywhere, at home and on the street, so I decided to move out into the country, to somewhere with less people, just for peace of mind. The house itself was big and somewhat old, but otherwise very welcoming. The agent who introduced me to the house had been required to mention that a serial killer had lived there in the past, which was why the house was so cheap. However, he and later my next-door neighbor, Sarah, both told me to pay the thought no mind. 4 other owners had lived in the house since then, and all of them were very happy with it. I loved the house. Its interior furnishings were beautiful and very comfortable. The people of Winthrop were friendly, open, often bringing over freshly baked pastries or inviting me over for dinner. Get-togethers, they said, were the key to making sure everyone who lived in Winthrop loved it there. Yet after a week, I stopped loving it. The feeling of someone watching returned, worse than before. I tried to ignore it, but soon I started losing sleep. Giant bags grew under my eyes, and I began yawning almost as much as I breathed. Sarah was kind enough to let me stay in her house for a few nights. It was during this time I heard the legend of Forrest Carter, the serial killer who had lived in my house. While no one knows his exact kill count, Carter, also known as the Winthrop Peacock, was a man with extremely severe case of narcissism. Legends say that he couldn't fall asleep if he didn't feel like he was being watched. He was finally arrested to watch him during the night, only it wasn't a scarecrow could stare at him. The story gave me shivers, and after I went home, I felt like there were hundreds of pairs of eyes just watching me no matter how I turned. Today, however, was the first day that I acted out. I was cooking breakfast when I felt the eyes. Instinctively, out of fear, I threw my kitchen knife, which lodged itself into the wall. As I pulled it out, I found myself staring into a pair of eyes, pickling in formaldehyde. I've been watching the polystyrene wall of my house for hours now. So far, they found 142 pairs of eyes in little glass jars. The scariest thing is, each and every one was staring at me. In the year 2026, the Messiah came back down to earth. She performed miracles and cured the sick. There was no doubt as to her authenticity. She appeared to all nations at once, all believed, all worshipped her. Sometime later, after this period of our history known as the Age of Peace, she dropped a bombshell on us. She warned us that heaven was almost full. Nobody had gone to hell during this age. There were a fixed amount of spots left. Paradise would be closed to all who died after the gates close. That is when the mass suicides began. Taking your own life, she had told us, was not a sin if you died a pious man. The race was on. She looked on and was pleased. She returned to her home, to her throne of fire and flames, and greeted all with a nod of her wicked horns. Here they come again, the brave ones. Another Halloween night, and the kids are back, here to prove their fearlessness. The old house's floorboards creak beneath their sneakers. Only half an hour until midnight, so I have to work fast. I start with their flashlight, blowing lightly against it so that it flickers. But this inspires little more than a nervous giggle. 15 minutes until midnight, time to take things up a notch. I hover up to the ceiling and will my body into flesh. My every nerve is on fire, but they've given me no choice. I force drops of blood to trickle out of my nose. But the boys below don't notice. I knock against the ceiling, but they won't even look up. I thought this place was supposed to be haunted, says the leader. What a joke. 5 minutes until midnight. I'm running out of time. With the last of my strength, I scream so loud that they finally turn to look up at me. I like to think I put on a good show. I sway on an invisible mousse, and the blood flows freely from my nostrils now. A couple of drops hit a skinny one with a crew cut. The boys scream and run into the night, just in time. Below me, I hear the thing turn, its disappointment palpable. For now, it sleeps, but one day I will fail. The boys will be too brave, and I won't scare them out in time. One day, they will wake it. Hello, my dear. You do not know who I am, but I know you. I am one of the 3 demons that were assigned to you at birth. You see, some people in this world are destined for greatness, destined to live happy, fulfilling lives. You, I'm afraid, are not one of those people. And it is our job to make sure of that. Who are we? Oh, yes, of course. How rude of me. Allow me to introduce us. Shame is my younger brother, the demon on your left shoulder, Shame tells us that you're a freak, that those thoughts you have are not normal, that you will never fit in. Shame whispered into your ear when your mother found you playing with yourself as a child. Shame is the one who makes you hate yourself. Fear sits on your right shoulder. He is my older brother. As old as life itself, fear fills every dark corner with monsters, turns every stranger on a dark street into a murderer. Fear stops you from telling your crush how you feel. It tells you it is better not to try than let people see you fail. Fear makes you build your own prison. Who am I then? I am the worst of your demons, but you see me as a friend. You turn to me when you have nothing else, because I live in your heart. I am the one who forces you to endure, the one who prolongs your torment. Sincerely, Hope. People started falling from the sky by the close of the decade. They were never clothed, always naked, always a petrifying grin on their faces. It had been just a few at first, then hundreds and thousands would fall at a time, destroying cars, homes, blocking off highways. Strange discoveries were made upon the search. They were human, but lacked any blood, intestines, even a heart. No one could explain the hideous grins they had, or even where they came from. It was a woman in Costa Rica who made the latest and most disturbing discovery. She recognized one of the fallen bodies as a long-dead relative, one who died back when she had been a teenager. Then more and more identifications were made. Soon people were picking out their long-dead loved ones amongst the video feeds, cadaver piles, and crematoriums. No one could explain why they were coming back, falling from the sky. Even more distressing, after disposing of the bodies, it wouldn't be long until the same body came plummeting from the sky again. You could not get rid of them, no matter what. People were getting killed by the higher volume of falling bodies, and soon after burial they too began to fall. My mother was killed when the body landed on her car, crushing her. The next week, the news reported on a body that had gotten lodged in an aeroplane windshield. I saw my mother's grinning face, the happiest I had ever seen her. They say when hell is full, the dead shall walk the earth. What about heaven? I watched as my soon-to-be father-in-law held his daughter's hand as he walked down the aisle, tears streaming down his face as the wedding march that played in the background reminded him that in a few minutes he would be watching me hold his daughter's hand and slipping on her ring. He walked up to the altar and I took hold of her hand, grinning from ear to ear. It was the happiest day of my life. My bride's father got down on his knees and started begging. Please, I did what you asked. Just please give my daughter back. I glared at him. Shut up and stop ruining the moment. If you sit back down and enjoy the ceremony, maybe I'll tell you where I've hidden the rest of her body. I flung myself through the door and vaulted the toppled, long-dead refrigerator that served as an ineffective barricade in front of me. My legs propelled me through the room and into the small hallway on the other side. I couldn't stop to eat the expired contents of the fridge, appealing to me despite their stench after several days without food. The shrieks of pain and cries for mercy around me spurred my body onward and filled me with unexpected energy in spite of my hunger. We were at war. I came to a halt in front of a small bathroom. A noise, something behind the shower curtain. My fear heightened, and images of the enemy flooded my mind. Merciless beasts wearing human skin, devouring indiscriminately, accepting no pleas and respecting no argument. Zombies. It had begun as we expected, with a virus. The original infected were almost a cliché. There was no humanity left in them, just mindless rage, twisted bodies, and some primal urge to consume others. Our generation had prepared. with almost obsessive focus for this monster. The first wave was eradicated with almost laughable ease. We were not prepared for adaptation. We were not prepared for the creature we bred by destroying the instantly recognizable zombie, a creature with more tact. Most of the first zombies were killed at close range. You understand, since longer range attacks were less likely to be fatal, we had trained ourselves, even before the outbreak, to equate infection with death. When it came to zombies, a person died with their eyes clouded over and they started biting, not when you put a bullet into their head. The new strain of the virus still controlled the body, yes. It left other faculties to the host. Maybe you could pull the trigger on a hopelessly crazed caricature of your best friend, your spouse, your child. But what if there was still a soul behind those eyes? If even as they attacked, they sobbed and screamed in their own voice? All the virus needed was a moment's hesitation. I bet you'd hesitate. I did. Which is why now I could only watch as my arm wrenched back the shower curtain and my hands reached for the cowering child. Why I could only beg for forgiveness before the virus used my mouth to tear ragged, bloody hunks from his body. Why I couldn't even vomit as my hunger dissipated with the now sickeningly familiar taste of human flesh. We were at war, and I am the enemy.